Oh my goodness. This week is my birthday week. And if you have been here for some time, you already know I love to do something that scares the shit out of me for my birthday. And this year is no different. So, years back, it was the idea to start this business. And that was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. Last year, it was actually to launch this podcast. And we launched this podcast, Career Cravings, in February last year. So happy 1 year to us. And this year, I've got some super exciting news that I've been waiting to share with you. For the first time ever, I am bringing one of my signature workshops. Yes, the ones that I have privately shared with my one-to-one clients only for free, and I'm opening it up for all corporate professionals. So if you are someone who is looking for your next opportunity, whether it's in IT, marketing, communications, HR, any field within the corporate sphere, if you're looking to level up, you have experience, you're just not sure why you're not landing interviews and offers, then this is for you. I have literally been asked to host this for over a year. If you've been listening along recently, I always host HR masterclasses. And behind the scenes, I'm coaching clients outside of HR. But this is the first time I'm offering this free workshop to all corporate professionals. So I hope you will join me. It's going to be a small and intimate session. The link is in the show notes, so swipe up. I'm hosting it on February 26th. I am also going to host a live Q&A, so please come out and join me. And I'm going to be breaking down my strategy for getting noticed in today's job market, how to strategically align your resume to the role, and how to get those callbacks and offers for the jobs you are really, really looking for. So it's going to be an incredible opportunity to show up, to learn, to grow, to step into that next level of your career, no matter what industry you're in. So if you've been listening along here and you want to dive deeper into those strategies that have helped hundreds, I think it's over 650 people land their dream roles, this is your chance. And I cannot wait to see you there on February 26th. Swipe up and save your seat for free. Now let's dive in. Today, I sat down with Kendall Berg, also known as That Career Coach, to talk about why the most qualified person does not always get the job, why your career is not a ladder and what it actually takes to get promoted, and also what really happens in those closed door promotion meetings, and also the truth about how she was able to rise in her career to the CFO level while having 2 young babies, as well as building a business from 0 to 4 million views and a 1,000 person waitlist off of one viral video. Listen until the end because Kendall also shares her 3-step formula to building a personal brand that gets you promoted, and even if you never post on social media. Let's dive in. Hey, it's Irina Pozan, and welcome back to the Career Cravings Podcast. This podcast has a simple mission. It's to help ambitious professionals like you build the career and life that you've been craving. Over the past 15 years, I've worked as an HR leader, designed hiring systems, led recruitment teams, and I've sat on the other side of the hiring table. I've seen what works in today's job market, what doesn't, and what separates those good candidates from the ones that actually land their dream roles. Now I'm bringing everything I've learned straight to you. Each episode is packed with actionable insights and tools to help you land your dream role sooner. Now let's dive in. Kendall, so good to see you today. I'm so excited to have you on Career Cravings today and dive into your amazing new book, which I have in front of me here, and also just about your career path and more about your story.
Thanks so much for having me, Irina. I am so excited to be here. As we were saying right before the show started, I feel like I already know you, so this will be a fabulous chat.
I can't wait. All right, let's do it. So I think it's really rare to see women in finance. And unfortunately, it's also rare to see women in C-suite positions. And you've been able to do both before your career coaching journey began. So I want to start there because obviously love career paths, love hearing that type of story. And I'd love to hear what you were up to previously and what you're to now.
Absolutely. So I'm a big fan of the idea that your career is not a ladder, it's a lattice, right? Sometimes you move diagonally, sometimes you take a lateral to get into a new division or to learn something new or to build relationships with a great new mentor or resource. And my career happened very much so like a lattice. So I studied mathematics and economics, and my dad said, what are you going to do with that? And I was like, I'm going to be a teacher, right? And that lasted all of like one semester of young education. And I was like, that is definitely not for me. And when I graduated, I had a really hard time finding work. So this would have been right in the peak financial crisis. All companies were down, nobody was hiring. And I, what my parents would say, true hustle fashion, peddled my resumes. Like I walked into corporate offices and left them at the front desk. I went to job fairs and handed them to anybody who would take them. And I met this one individual, really liked him, we had a great connection, but he was hiring for accountants. And he was like, you're not an accountant. And I was like, I do know math pretty well though. So I'd love to at least chat with you about the opportunity. And he brought me in. He's like, you're not the right fit. I need accountants, but the CFO needs effectively a chief of staff who's going to go in and solve problems in all these different areas. And I feel like you could be a great fit. I want you to meet with him. So I went in for an interview. I sat with 5 other individuals, all of whom had much more impressive educational backgrounds than I did and had work experience. And the CFO came in and said, what do you guys think of our new marketing strategy? And everyone went, oh my gosh, it's so great. What a wonderful idea. And I went, you do not understand your core customer at all. And you're going to have a big dip in profits before it bounces back.
That is brave.
It was brave. It was stupid. I look back and I'm like, I would never do that now. But I was right. And they were going through this huge switch and they were trying to target a very high echelon client and they were a very cost affordable brand. And so they were trying to switch a lot of their marketing all at once. And the individual who'd brought me in for the interview made eye contact with the CFO. He goes, yeah, I told you. And he was like, yeah, we're done here. And I got a job offer 15 minutes later, written by HR while I was sitting there and signed and started. So I had a very unique start to my career in that I was in executive rooms right off the gate. I was solving really big problems that frankly probably shouldn't have been, but that's what they needed. And so you learn really quickly on the job. And what I found in that very first opportunity, and the reason I spend so much time talking about it when I talk about my career story, is what my unique skill set was. I can learn something fast and I can fix it even faster. And that first job taught me that that's what I had that my peers didn't. That's what I had that my boss didn't. That's what I had that other individuals I was working with were struggling with. And it's so important in your own career to understand what that unique skill set is that you bring, to understand what it is that sets you apart. So after that, I took many similar jobs. I worked as a data scientist. I worked in tech. I worked in true finance. I worked in IA and internal audit. I held lots of different jobs where really I was hired to go solve the problems nobody had time and nobody had acumen for. Go fix the problem. And it was a really interesting journey. I got very stuck in the middle. I talk about this a lot on my channel that I wasn't a great communicator. Great at understanding the problem, great at solving it, not great at keeping relationships along the way. Very bull in a china shop, as you can see by how I answered my CFO's question saying, I think you're making a huge mistake with your marketing strategy. And at about the manager level, really got stuck and had to learn the soft skill side. How do you build relationships while you're breaking things down and fixing problems? How do you maintain relationships when you're telling somebody that they're wrong or that there's a different path? How do you communicate effectively with executives when you're telling them stuff that they don't want to hear and you don't want to have to tell them? And that journey was really what accelerated me. So after that, I got 5 promotions in 6 years. I was offered a CFO role. I've spent a majority of my career in financial services and in fintech. It was a really great opportunity. It wasn't the right time in my life. I had 2 young kids, 2 under 1. So I had a 11-month-old and a newborn when I was offered that job. And I was like, there's no way I can be sleeping in the office on the weekends for launches, answering to the board 24/7 with 2 young kids. It just wasn't feasible. Turned it down and then went through a very political part in my career where I was dealing with very hierarchical companies that loved politics, didn't necessarily love being transparent. And through that, started Career Coach because I found that there were so many things I had learned that I had taught myself over the course of my career that came in handy that people around me just didn't know. And people around me really struggled with. And I always joke, like the dumping ground for poor performers. Every executive I had was like, oh, just put them in Kendall's team. She'll whip them into shape. And I was like, I don't feel like I should always take the people who are struggling, but I do really invest in people and have a good track record of turning their performance around. So Career Coach was born out of that. And then exploded on social media with my first video getting 4 million views. And I went from no business to 1,000 people on a wait list. And it was wild.
Wow, that's incredible. There's so much I want to dig into there. I mean, first of all, your path was so not traditional. People wait their whole careers to get a chief of staff role to be able to be in those rooms, and you got it right out of the gate, which is incredible. They obviously saw something in you, which was so amazing and taught you a lot. So now I can see where these 36 lessons that you talk about in your book come from, which is amazing. And so much there about how early on you knew about your personal brand and what you were known for. So I want to circle back to that as well. But tell me more on what you just ended with, because I think that's so interesting. So you posted a video and it went viral out of the gate. I'll tell you, that was not my experience starting a business. So I want to dissect that a little bit, looking back and obviously having now relationships with many other career coaches in this space. Do you think it was that set you apart? Was it some of the same things that set you apart earlier in your career? Was it something different?
I think, my first video was end of 2020, beginning of 2021. And I don't think we were as honest about what the career space is then as we are now. There's been a huge cultural shift, in my opinion, in the last 4 or 5 years of people being very honest of like, I don't want to work nights and weekends. And I don't like that my CEO said this in a meeting. And I don't love that my boss pings me high in the middle of my lunch break every Tuesday, right? We've had a big cultural shift. But at that time, that wasn't common. And the video that I posted said, nobody cares if you're good at your job. They just care if they know you.
Mm-hmm.
And being known and building relationships is going to help you progress faster than being exceptional at your actual role. And at that time, I think that was just something we all thought, but nobody said yet. Now, since then, I've seen tens of thousands of people post similar perspectives on the internet, right? But I think the timing was perfect. It was funny. I woke up at like 1:00 in the morning, had this epiphany for a video, sat down, made a TikTok account, made it with no makeup on in my pajamas with a really heavy filter that's not cute at all, and posted it thinking nothing of it. And then it went crazy. But I think that's what really set it apart was this honest perspective that, no, you're not crazy. Yes, careers are about who you know, and they are about building relationships. They are about communication. Yes, you have to be competent. Very few people progress quickly who lack competence. It happens, but it's rare. But you really have to understand people and relationships and communication. And so I think bringing that fresh perspective, people were like, oh, I'm not crazy. This is a real thing. Like she said it on the internet. And half my comments were absolutely not. That's not how it works. You have to be super confident.
Right.
And half my comments were like, oh, thank God, somebody finally said the real thing out loud. And it was funny because I joked, and we have many career coach friends in common. My platform was built on controversy. And I don't think many people are comfortable with that. They're not comfortable with being the controversial take. And a lot of my content is. I talked about why softening your language is important when you're dealing with executives.
Yes.
A lot of women don't like that because it is a feedback that's majority given to women. It tends to be very gender specific, which I don't agree with that take. But people didn't like that perspective. They didn't like that you didn't need to be good at your job. You needed to be good at networking. People didn't like the importance of building relationships over building skill set. And that controversy, I think, is really what helped my first few videos go really viral. So I had about 15 in a row that got over 500,000 views. Grew really rapidly, had 200,000 followers on Instagram and 100,000 on TikTok in like the span of 3 days. It was crazy. The whole business was born out of that. And I always say also, like, I'm a Christian. I believe it was a God thing. And he was like, you need a platform to help people who think these things but don't know how to get better at them. And that combined with bringing this controversial, argumentative take, I think really landed well on social media.
I'm hearing such a full circle moment because that's essentially what also got you that job, right? When you spoke up, you shared a controversial opinion and they obviously loved it. They gave you an offer 15 minutes later. So I love that. So I'm hearing a lot of authenticity too and being true to who you are. And this is like the red thread that has carried through your career and made you successful there and then starting your own business too, which is amazing. Okay, tell me more. What are the secrets of the career game?
So for me, I believe the career game gets a bad rep. I think people hate it. And I get why. Trust me, I get why. We've all been burned by that one coworker that you're like, if they call me one more time and then go behind my back and steal credit for my work, I'm going to shank them in the parking lot. Like we've all worked with that one person. But I think the game exists because at some level of leadership, you no longer want technical people. Nobody wants to work for the super technical boss who has no people skills.
100%. I used to support nuclear engineers, and I'll tell you, they were freaking amazing PhD. Some of them were rocket scientists, but they didn't want to be leaders, and no one wanted them to be their leader, right?
Yes.
It's very different and sometimes like opposing skill set, right? People in math too, right?
And everybody thinks that it should be a meritocracy. The best, most technical person should get paid the most and be the most senior. But the reality is those people very rarely have good people management skills, have good communication skills, know how to advocate for their team, know how to get them promoted. And more often than not, they become micromanagers because they're so technical that they don't know how to release autonomy to other people. And the game is what has been built as a result of that, which is that the corporate world doesn't operate as a meritocracy. It operates as a soft skill people ladder. The secrets of the career game in the book are 36 tactical things that I've built over the course of my career that I use with my clients that help you navigate that. Because where I think the game gets a bad reputation is nobody knows how to play. And the book opens with this, and I say it all the time. If somebody asks you to play chess and was like, I'm not going to teach you the rules, but if you lose, you make no money, your family falls apart, you lose your home, no livelihood, you're destitute. But if you win, you could make like $5 million. Most people are not going to play that game. They're not going to take the risk. And yet that's the exact same thing that's happening in our careers. We're playing a game. Nobody teaches us the rules. Nobody teaches us how to navigate those rules. Nobody teaches us how to be successful. And we're staking our entire livelihood on it. And so the secrets are, what are those tactical things that you do to build a personal brand, to build a network, to nurture a network, to have a good relationship with your boss, to get promoted? Like, how do you build these skills in an A plus B equals C math mindset rather than what most execs say, which is you just need to work on your communication.
Executive presence.
Yeah. And they're like, I don't know what that means. I'm like, cool, here's what it means. And here's how to do it. And that's why I wrote the book. That's why I became a coach, because I could have saved myself so much heartache and pain had somebody just sat me down, and somebody eventually did. And I talk about him all the time. I don't know if he even remembers saying this to me, but if somebody just sat me down and told me, do these 4 things, it'll make you better. I could have saved myself years and years and years in my career and a lot of frustration and emotional angst. And that's the target of both my coaching and the book, Secrets of the Career Game, is how do you learn these things in a way that allows you to apply them over and over and over again?
I love that. And I think you're right. Most people do believe the best person will get the job. And I think your career is proof that like you got a very senior role right out of the gate. And I always say to my clients who are job seekers, like, the most qualified candidate doesn't get the role. It's the person that can articulate their value and communicate in that interview. And it's very similar. I love that. I have been someone in my own career that has spent my career in HR. And I love how you broke down the 9 box and performance reviews and things that happen behind the scenes that I think a lot of people are not aware of. Can you tell me about some of those things, like a couple things that keep people stuck from getting promoted?
Yeah. So number 1, it's exposure, right? And I mean exposure in 2 different ways. One is when you are climbing up in corporate in your lattice and you're determining your next steps, very rarely do we get exposure to how promotions are decided or how performance reviews are written or how people get promoted. So you don't understand the mechanics of what's happening behind the scenes, which is why, Arena, to your point, I go into it in the book. They're going to measure you on a 9 box. They're going to measure you on a bell curve. They're going to measure you these ways, and you need to stand out. But the second part of exposure is not enough people know who you are. And there's this huge misconception that your boss determines whether or not you get promoted. And it's just false. Unless you work for the CEO, and then maybe he does determine if you get promoted. But unless you're working for like literally the tippy top of your organization, what's going to happen is they're going to go into a room and they're going to go, what do we think about Arena? And somebody's going to go, she's so sweet and I love her and she's so nice. She's so helpful. And somebody else is going to go, oh my gosh, she killed it with this project. She was so organized. It was great. Somebody else is going to go, who? And then we spend 30 minutes explaining who you are to the person who said who instead of talking about your promotion. And you have to get a quorum in these group settings in order to promote somebody generally. I believe understanding the mechanics of how a promotion works helps you navigate that better, right? You're going to need senior leader advocates. So step 1 is figuring out who even sits in that room. Odds are it's not even your boss unless you're very senior. So is it directors and above? Is it heads of and above? Is it VPs and above? Is it executive directors and above? Like, who is even in those rooms and how do you build relationships with them? And then how are they going to measure you? And the reality is you're going to be compared to your peers. So do you stand out among your peers? Are you a higher performer than all the other managers, than all the other senior managers? Do you hang at the next level, right? The best thing that can happen in a performance review or in a promotion discussion is we think Kendall should be a director. And somebody goes, she's not already a director? That's your best case, right? You want to be perceived that way before you ever go into that room. So who's going to be sitting there? How are they going to be measuring you and against whom? And then what is it that you bring in value at the next level? And this is a big miss I see in the senior levels when I'm working with executive clients is they say, well, I work so hard and I do so much and my team is huge and we delivered ROI. And I'm like, great. What does the company get if they choose to pay you more that they're not getting today? What do they get from you? They're like, well, what do you mean? I'm doing my job. And I'm like, great, they pay you for your job. What does the company receive as a return on investment if they pay you $50K more as a senior director? If they pay you $50K more as a director, what do they get? And a lot of people have a hard time answering that question. And that's why they get stuck in the senior levels because they think, well, I'm doing a good job. I'm like, yeah, good job gets you to like senior manager. After that, you need to get something new and you need to be able to articulate what that is. And you need to arm the leaders who are going to sit in that performance review with what that is so that they can speak to your behalf. So those are the three main pieces of performance that I don't feel companies educate on. I don't feel bosses tell you about. In fact, I'll give a very quick side story. I know I'm long-winded, but I have a coworker and she's sweet, competent, brilliant, love her, think she should have been promoted a long time ago. She comes to me and she's like, hey, I have this guy on my team and I need to get him promoted. And I've been trying for 3 years and it's not going through. And I was like, okay, well, send me his promotion paperwork. And she was like, what promotion paperwork? And I was like, okay, well, who's his panel? And she's like, his what? I'm like, his panel of senior stakeholders who's going to advocate for him in the promotion room. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm concerned. 3 years, what have you been doing? She's like, well, I've been asking every cycle. And I was like, no. Okay. We need promotion paperwork. You need to meet with HR and you need to see what competencies he needs to display at the next level. You need to get him a panel, which means 3 or more senior executives to sit in the promotion room who's going to advocate for him. You need to fill out this form. Here's the template. And she was like, is this the process? Like nobody's ever communicated this to me. She's a director. Okay. So she's very senior. Nobody's ever communicated it to me. And I was like, I have no idea how that's possible. But the second I started in this company, I met with HR and I said, what's your promotion packet look like?
Right.
How many people do you have to have in the room? Who's in the room? Who are these? Not for myself, but for my team. And I've had 3 people promoted in the last 3 years, right? Because that's something that I value and that I instill in my team. And it's one of those situations where like she was very senior, very educated, very smart, but nobody had ever taught her the mechanics of how it works. And as a result, for 3 years, she kept trying, and kept falling short. I don't think it's easy to get promoted, but I think there's a formula for it. And if you learn the formula, it's much faster. And that individual got promoted 3 months after she and I met. So I tell that story because 2 reasons. 1, if you are the boss, know what the heck the process is. And 2, don't bank on your boss knowing what the process is. You need to do your own research and you need to advocate for yourself because sometimes they may be very well intentioned and they just don't know how to do it themselves either.
I love that. And so many people think, there's so many smoke and mirrors, or I shouldn't ask, or it's not my place to ask. I'm not the one that's in HR. I'm not the one in the rooms and feel uncomfortable asking. But I love that right away. You just asked about that. Actually, my own story, I remember being so shocked about this, but 5 years into my own career, I landed my dream job. It was this HR manager job at like a top company. I didn't think I was qualified at all. And every day I went to work with the biggest smile on my face. I was like, they don't know I'm not supposed to be here. Like, I don't have the experience. And I was just so grateful for having that job. And I sat in front of this woman's office who was very senior and had a lot of pull. And she was always in those rooms that we're talking about. And she wasn't my VP, but she was a VP of another HR group. And at the round table, I learned about this later. But at the round table, what she said was, you guys hired Irina at the wrong level. I hear all her conversations. I see her every day. You guys hired her at the wrong level. And I was promoted just because of her saying that. And she was such a huge advocate. And like, that's when I realized I was like, wow, it was that simple. Like we built a nice relationship, but I didn't think anything of it. But she was such a huge supporter and I was promoted months later. And I didn't even think I was qualified for the job I already had, right? So knowing the way things work, knowing the right people to advocate for you. Because if I had gone to my boss at the time and said, I would love to lead a bigger team or express any of that, she would have thought it's way too quick. I'm a threat to her personal role, right? So if those are your only relationships with just your leader, you're probably going to get stuck for a very long time, right? So
Well, and
love
you
that.
touched on something really unique there, which is, you talked about authenticity being kind of the red thread for me. The relationship you built with that VP was based on authentic connection.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
this is where I think networking gets a bad reputation is they're like, oh, well, it's slimy and it's salesy and I'm building these relationships with like a strategy in mind. You can be strategic and still authentic. You can know that this VP holds a lot of sway and is really great and is wonderful and could be a great mentor to you and be authentically building a relationship. And what you did was you built that authentic relationship and she turned right around without prompting and said, all right, she needs a promotion. She's at the wrong level. And I think it's really important to hone in on this. I coach young women in my city. I do it once a year. We do a big nonprofit event for 10 days. And a girl asked me this question this year, and I was so surprised by her maturity. She said, what is the difference between networking and asking for favors?
Mm,
And I was like, that's such a mature question. She's like, I don't want to be using them. I don't want to manipulate them. So
mm.
how do you find the difference? And I said, the difference is authenticity. If you genuinely want a relationship with this person, if you're willing to go to bat for them just as much as they're willing to go to bat for you, you have an authentic networking relationship. If you only talk to this person 3 weeks before performance reviews in the hopes that they are going to advocate for you in a closed room, then you're asking for favors, you're using them. And it was a really great conversation. And so I just wanted to touch on that because you brought up, hey, I built this authentic connection. We talked. I wasn't telling her, hey, can you help me get promoted? I wasn't telling
I
her,
wasn't even thinking it.
yeah, hey, will you tell my boss I'm doing a good job because I sit outside your office? Like it doesn't have to be that type of exchange, but authentic, real connection with people who are influential is smart.
And people
And
can feel that energy when you're coming to them 3 weeks before a performance review and talking about those topics in circles instead of just genuinely wanting to connect, right? And have
Mhm.
conversation about them as well. And you're right. So many of my clients are like, oh, I really don't want to network. And I'm like, well, it's because you feel like you need to ask for something right now. Like, I need a job today. But if you think about the length of your career and how many years you're going to be working and genuinely building relationships that are mutually beneficial, it's going to help. It might not help 3 weeks from now, but it may like a year from now. I want to ask you about something that you touched on as well, which is acting as if you're already at that level. I know you mentioned that like in passing, and there's opposing views on that. So I know a lot of people get the advice of like already act at that level in order to be promoted. And others are like, no, you're going to have to pay me first before I take anything additional on. I'd love to hear your take on that as a promotion strategy.
remember when I said I love controversial opinions?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
my 2 cents here is if you assume your work falls into 3 categories, there is your presence and communication, there is your tactical BAU, and there is your impact. Your job is based off those 3 things. And when you are looking to get promoted to the next level, your presence and communication needs to already operate at that next level. Full stop. I don't think there's any exceptions to this. If you talk like a manager, lead like a manager, act like a manager, host meetings like a manager, you will not get to senior manager because they're not going to see that potential in you. And this kind of goes back to the 9 box, which we didn't spend much time on. And I'll try to keep this quick just for your listeners. 9 box is essentially your performance is one way you're measured, which is how good are you at your job? That's your BAU tasks and your impact. And your potential is how are you perceived as the organization as a future leader? Do we see her getting to the C-suite level? Do we see her becoming an executive? Do we see her in the future being capable of taking on larger teams, larger tasks, larger programs? And potential is this communication executive presence piece. How are you perceived across the organization? And so to answer your original question, to get to, let's say, from senior manager to director, you must already look, think, feel, see, act like a director. All right. You don't need to be doing the scope of work of a director. You don't need to be working 80-hour weeks of a director for senior manager pay, but the perception of how you show up, how you lead, how you engage, how you communicate must be at that next level. Now, when it comes to scope and impact, this is where I think, to your point, Irina, people get salty on the internet is like, well, I'm not going to take on director level work if you're not going to pay me director level salary. And I do understand this perspective. Right? I had warned clients all the time, please do not ever take a role with a promised promotion in 3 months or a promised scope in 3 months. It's not going to happen. Don't do that to yourself. However, there is a difference between taking on this scope, taking on this work, burning yourself out, working 80-hour weeks to prove you can be a director, and learning to evaluate that scope like a director. Boss comes to you and says, hey, I want you to take on project A. This is a great opportunity for you to get closer to that director level promotion. and you say, I completely understand why project A is important. I'd love to take that on. Who would you like me to delegate my current work to?
Mhm.
Right? Get that resource. Get that bag, girl. Okay, get that resource. If they say, hey, there's nobody for you to delegate to, say, well, unfortunately, I'm at capacity. Would you like me to deprioritize some of these things completely? I can stop working on them in order to focus on project A, right? It doesn't mean compromising your boundaries. It doesn't mean compromising your ability to do your work. What it does mean is evaluating the work as if you were a director. Directors don't
Mhm.
take everything that comes their way. They say, hey, I'd love to do that. Here's what I need. That is director level thinking, which goes back to that presence, attitude, communication. Now you look like a director, you think like a director, you speak like a director. So you can take on some director level scope with trade-offs.
I
Hey,
love
I'm
that.
trading off my senior manager scope. I'm trading off these lower tasks that I've been doing. So that may, if we go back to the three categories, your communication presence is up. Your BAU tasks should actually go down because you should delegate those to other people. You should deprioritize them. You should become less important. And your impact should go up.
I love
So
that.
I think where this gets a bad rep is people just start taking stuff. Yes, I'd love to do that. Yes, I'd love to do that. And then they're working 80-hour works for no additional pay, leading a huge team, and they don't get credit for it. That's where I think there's a sticking point. But if I walk into that room and Irina wants to get promoted to director and she communicates, talks, I've sat near her desk, I've heard her calls, I've
Mhm.
seen her meetings, I've seen her lead her team. She's at the wrong level. She should be a director. That's presence and communication, not scope.
Mhm. I love that.
And then if I give her that stretch opportunity and she says, hey, I'd love to take that on, I'm going to need to give some of my work to somebody else. Who can I give that to? I have even more respect for her now. Now I see her as that director. The long and short answer is you should be doing director level work as a senior manager, but you should not be doing director level scope as a senior manager. And that's where I think people get stuck is it can be very hard to take on the work without taking on the scope and
Yes.
you build those trade-offs effectively.
And I love the way you positioned it. You literally gave the script for how to respond. And then it's a win-win. You're taking on that work that is meaningful, has the exposure, will have people see you in that director light without burning yourself out. Love, love, love that. You also mentioned the 9 box. And in HR, we were always trained. Any senior leader that comes in, they're like, I want to promote someone. If they put them in box 8 or 9, we always ask, do they have potential at the next level? Do you see them as a VP in 5 years? Do you see them as a director in a year from now? And they would, if they hesitate and say, no, I don't think they have the potential at the next level, then we'd have a conversation about saying, okay, this is a really strong performer, but this is not someone promotable. And this is not someone who is going to get those top 8 and 9 kind of boxes, which are essentially those promotion worthy employees. So love that. I'd love to switch gears and talk about something that recently happened on your social media, going back to social media. So the red top, the red sweater, whatever that was, I recently, when I saw that, I was, first of all, let's catch people up to what that was. So you posted a video giving career advice the way you always have for the last 5 years and giving your career opinions and advice. And you were wearing a high neck, conservative type top, in my opinion. And on LinkedIn, it seems like you got some really inappropriate comments, especially from men. So I'd love to dig into that. But the reason I really want to ask you about this is because something similar happened to me on Facebook. And I had a very different reaction. I was embarrassed. I took it to mean something about me. I deleted the comments. I was trying to understand what I had done wrong. So when I saw your reaction, which I'd love for you to tell our folks about, it really made me, I was so proud of you. I was like, they should be called out for this. But tell me more about what happened and how you made the decision to create the post that you created next after that.
Yeah. So for those of you guys who don't follow me on LinkedIn, I had about 10,000 followers when this happened. As of today, I have about 25,000. So yay
Yeah.
for wrong reasons of virality. So I posted this video. It's very conservative top. It was fitted. My shoulders were exposed, but my arms were covered, high neck.
So what? Yeah.
And what I have said, and I've said this to family members, I record everything on my desk, which is where I'm recording this now. It's always the same backdrop, except right now it's Christmassy. The angle does make my chest look very large. Now, I have recorded 1,000 videos from that exact same angle, and I have never even looked back through the videos and checked them. Like, I don't watch my own content because I think my own
It's
voice is
cringy.
cringy. Yep. And so I didn't catch that it is a weird angle at the very start of the video. And then after that, I moved to other angles like I always do, and it kind of passes. But when I posted the video on LinkedIn, I've never had anything go viral on LinkedIn. I have a decent sized following. I get about 1 million engagements a week. It's great. It went nuts. So the first few days, I didn't even notice because my VA usually will check my comments. She'll be in there. I didn't even notice what was happening. And I still work a corporate job. And my boss called me and was like, hey, something is going on LinkedIn. You should check.
Mm-hmm.
So my problem with what ultimately happened is it's not even about me. It's not even about them. It's the fact that my boss can now see this, which is a separate issue. So I go in and these comments are zoomed in pictures of my chest, reposted in the comments, are comments about me sleeping my way to the top. There were comments asking for my OnlyFans link. There were comments. This is LinkedIn, okay? LinkedIn, where I can see your full legal name, your employer, your role, like to me.
And your whole following could see what you're posting on other people's comments. It's not like Facebook or Instagram.
Yes.
It's like that isn't broadcasted. So
Yes.
what do you think happened there?
So to me, this was completely inappropriate for that platform. And I have some really good friends who work at LinkedIn. I visited their office in New York in April. It is not a LinkedIn problem. It is a people problem, right? And I want to be really clear because I had a lot of people from LinkedIn like, what do you want us to do? And I was like, you don't need to do anything. But I think somebody left a not nice comment. And I think when people see that, they feel far more comfortable doing similar things. And it very quickly got out of control. So in the beginning, I did delete a few because there were some that were incredibly explicit, like very like show up at your house kind of explicit. And I did delete some, I blocked some people, but it just kept going. And then women started chiming in, talking about how it was inappropriate and how I'm the reason that women aren't successful at work and I give women a bad reputation. And it snowballed. And then I think once there were so many comments, then everybody's like, well, who's going to notice my comment in this sea of bad comments? And it got worse and worse. So I debated taking down the video. I talked to my husband about it. I talked to friends. And I think, I have pretty thick skin. My whole social media platform is built on half of my population hating me. Okay, I'm used to it. But there was something about it being professionals, executives, being so downright disrespectful on a professional platform that it really hurt. And I think, a lot of people have come to me and similar to you, been like, you were so brave and that's such a great response. I had a hard time getting out of bed for days because I knew that as soon as I checked my comments, it was going to be awful. And this is the reason people don't like to be on the internet, right? This is the people why
I hate talking head videos. I push myself to do them. I actually hate them. Yeah.
And this is why, because people don't see you as a person. They see you as a figurehead and they think they can put whatever they want. So I don't know what about that particular video made it snowball so quickly. I will say the positives were I more than doubled my following and I got 7 clients from it last month. So not a ton of complaints here, but it got really bad. So for your listeners who weren't following, I started by responding. And my husband thought this was hysterical. So somebody would say, drop the link to your OnlyFans. And I'd be like, so sorry, I haven't joined that platform yet, but here's a link to book a call for coaching. I have a feeling you're going to need it. And then somebody would post.
Okay, there's your humor.
Yes.
We're
and then
funny.
Somebody would notice like, it's just because of her chest. And I'm like, thank the Lord that God endowed me, wishing you best of luck in your job search. Like comments like that, because I was like, this is almost comical at this point. So I started responding. One person's like, why is she holding a coffee cup? I'm like, probably because it's full of coffee, Robert. Like just things like that. And I started responding and then my responses started getting more likes. Mm-hmm. And then of course the video goes viral all over again. So we were at about 2.5 million views when I started responding to comments, grew to about 6.5 million views after the comments. So then the comments kept getting worse. So I decided to make a video. And for people who didn't follow, I admit everything I'm sharing here. It was a fitted top. It wasn't a great angle. I still think it was appropriate. Like it's not like my cleavage is hanging out or I'm in a camisole or in a sports bra, which I've seen on LinkedIn, not throwing shade on those influencers, but like I thought I was dressed appropriately. And I screenshot some of my favorite comments and I put them in the video and I read out their first and last name, their place of employment, their title, and what they said.
Obsessed. So
and
good.
I didn't provide any opinion. I didn't provide any like, this is a horrible thing to put on the internet. How dare you? It wasn't that type of video.
It speaks for itself. There is no need. When you see the comment, you just know.
And these people are professionals. They work in a corporate environment. They have their own HR, many of which reached out to me after that video posted and were like, should we do something? I'm like, hey, you're HR. I'm just telling you what happened. And one of them was a chief marketing officer. One of them was a CEO. Like these are high level people at large companies. And I just read their comments out and people loved it, right? It's funny because when they left those comments, even though it gets reposted to their following, even though you can see their name and employment, they never thought that anybody would talk about it, right? To me, this is like the equivalent of like the Coldplay kiss cam is like, we did it, but we didn't think we were going to get caught. And I was like, oh, you mean this? But I posted that one. That one, I think, got a lot of traction. A lot of women in the comments, especially, like, this happens to me all the time. This is horrible. This is what's wrong with the internet. And I think that to me is the hardest piece is we have come so far as a society. We've come so far as a corporation. I believe I am very good at my job. I believe I put advice out on the internet to be helpful. And for people to think that that's acceptable in a professional setting is what hurts me the most. So many women were in my comments saying they'd heard things like that in the workplace. They had comments like that on their LinkedIn. And I told a friend of mine, I said, what's the point of having a platform if I don't use it?
Yes. That's
And
why I
to
was so
me,
glad you did.
this is the use of the platform is like, you cannot say things like this and get away with it. It's not okay. It's not acceptable. It's not appropriate. And, early on in my career, I had an executive tell me once that he thought I should be dancing on the table instead of sitting at it. And I've referenced this on other podcasts. It's in my book. I've talked about it online. He did get fired for that, just in case you were curious. But I quit. The meeting ended. I walked to my HR office and I said, thank you so much. I'd like to tender my 2-week resignation. And she was like, would you like to sue? And I was like, no, I'm just done. And walked out of the building that day, never went back. Got a great job paying me 3 times as much. It was the best decision I ever made. But those types of comments do happen. They still happen. It's unfortunate. I don't think it's reflective of an entire gender or entire industry or entire type of individual. But I do think that to me, that was unacceptable. And so you got a platform, might as well use it. And to me, this is something worth using it for, is to say like, hey, this is not appropriate, respectable behavior. If you're going to be a professional, act professional.
Yeah, I love that. And seriously, it made me think too, all of those things, but also I regretted the way I responded to the one that I got. But like Facebook is different where even though it's also your real names, like it's not as professional. And by the time I saw my comments, it was actually my husband that told me, because I don't even log into Facebook. It just happens to repost, right? And he's like, oh my goodness, these are the comments that you're getting. And I'm like, what? And same thing. I was wearing a shirt up to here. I was just like leaning in over a table a little bit, like face up. Like it was very strange and so many weird emojis and comments. And I remember thinking, should I just like delete the video altogether? I just kept deleting the comments, but so glad that you did that. Last question for you, because I think some of these reasons are reasons why people are afraid to build an online personal brand, where we know that that's more important now than ever, especially with AI and things like that. And earlier on, you were talking about the way you knew what your personal brand was very early. You solved problems and you would get it done, essentially, is what I heard, right? If people gave you a project, they knew they could count on you, get it done, you'd solve the problem. How does someone go about building a personal brand, whether it's at work, online, whichever way you want to take it?
Yeah. So I think you have to understand yourself first. People come to me all the time with these like aspirational personal brands. I'm like super organized and a great communicator and all these things. I'm like, awesome. Are you organized? They're like, no. I'm like, that can't be your brand then. Play to your existing strengths. Most people, it's very rare to see a large skill shift. All skills can improve, in my opinion, but it requires intentionality, strategy, a lot of time investments. Understand you first. Your brand doesn't need to be like Arena's. It doesn't need to be like mine. It needs to be like you. And I feel like it's so easy to look side to side and be like, what's so-and-so doing? What's so-and-so doing? And want to copy that. That's never going to resonate. So whether you go on social media or you're in your company and you're building a personal brand, be you, be authentic, understand yourself. And the second is repetition. I talk about my personal brand all the time in interviews, when I meet people, when I'm added to a project. I'll give an example. My personal brand is I'm the person you put in the black hole to bring solutions to problems. I do this by building the next generation of great leaders and repeatable, scalable processes. It's been my brand for 15 years. When I get added to a new chaotic project, I go, sweet, another black hole for me to fix. What do you want? What do you need? And because I use consistent language, every boss I've ever had has written black hole in my performance review. They all think they made it up. Every single one of them is written in their performance review. Because I talk about building the next generation of leaders, and that's how I handle my promotion conversations. That's how I manage my team. I am always tagged as an emerging leader, a next gen leader, always. And a lot of it comes down to consistency in your language, how you describe yourself, how you talk about yourself, how you talk about your team. So be true to who you are, be authentic to yourself. Don't look side to side. Use repetition in your language and consistency. And if you can do those 2 things and then follow through on it, that's going to build you a brand. We have a lot more control over what our personal brand is than we think we do. This isn't high school. where Susie Q is going to determine your reputation for you and spread it in the hallways and between classes. You have a lot of control over it. And so owning that, stepping into it, being confident with it, especially with women, there's a lot of imposter syndrome, men as well, but especially women, so much imposter syndrome of like, oh, I can't say I'm a next generation leader because like that sounds cocky or that sounds arrogant or that sounds too confident. Girl, if you're not confident, who's going to be confident for you? So those would be my 3 biggest pieces of advice. I know we're coming up on time, so to wrap that quickly, but I would say you can do that. You can control your personal brand, and that personal brand, to your point, Arena, that's going to get you followers if that's your aim. That's going to get you a new job if that's your aim. That's going to get you promoted if that's your aim, because that's what people are attracted to. They don't necessarily have time to know all of you, but they have time to know your brand. And if your brand is consistent, it's going to help you accelerate.
1,000%. And I'm a strength-based coach. So I love focusing in on the strengths. It's like, what are you naturally good at? It's going to be so much easier to build a brand around that than, to your point, around something that you're not that great at, right? So I love that. So assessing what your friends and family already go to you for, what people come to you for at work, like what are those things that set you apart? Focus in on those. Love it. All right, really last question for you. Where can people find you if they want to connect, if they want to see that red top video or anything else, get more tips from you? Where can people find you?
So I'm that career coach pretty much everywhere. So TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. I think I have an X, though I don't know that I've checked it in forever, Threads, and then LinkedIn, Kendall Berg. And that's where all of the content is. I'd love to connect with you guys, answer any questions. And I do recommend, if you're listening to this, like check out the book. Secrets of the Career Game is, I always joke, it is a how-to manual for your career. It's much more technically written than it is like fun. It is a guide on how to start doing some of this stuff better. And I really wrote it to try and be helpful.
It really is helpful. I've read it. I can attest to that. And it is so to the point. It's like, number 1, here's what it is. This is what you have to do. Let's move on. Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for being here. And it was so great to get to know you and look forward to reconnecting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful.
Hey, before you go, if you've enjoyed listening to today's show, I would love your support. Please take a moment to leave a review anywhere where you listen to podcasts. And here's the exciting part. I'm running a special contest and giving away a one-on-one session with yours truly. All you have to do is leave a review, take a screenshot, and send it to me in my DMs. All of my contact info is in the show notes. I appreciate you so much, and I cannot wait to build the career and life that you've been craving together. See you next week.